Hello, 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 and thank you so much for joining today. Welcome to our live session. It is fantastic to have you all here. Please say hello in the comments if you are joining live. We would love to hear where you are watching from today. We always have people joining from all over the world, which is very exciting. I am Melody Wilding. I am an author of a book called Trust Yourself, Stop Overthinking, and Channel Your Emotions for Success at Work. And for over 10 years now, I have been helping people I call sensitive strivers, deep thinking, and feeling high achievers get out of their own way, which is exactly what we are talking about today. So remember, as you are coming on, say hi in the chat. Let us know where you are watching from. And I also have a couple questions for you. I want to ask you if you have ever found yourself procrastinating on things at work that you know are important, but you still can't bring yourself to do them. Or maybe you have chronically doubted your abilities despite being very successful, having a lot of achievements under your belt rather, and maybe that has held you back from going for bigger opportunities. Or maybe you have struggled with saying yes too much, saying sure to every request that comes across your plate, even though you're already overbooked. These are classic examples of how we can be our own worst enemies in the workplace. And that's exactly what we are going to talk about today. Our topic is identifying self-sabotaging patterns. So, hello to, let's see, we have folks joining from Arizona, Oklahoma, South Dakota. Jeff in Chicago, great to see you here. Yes, as you're coming on, say hi in the chat. Let us know where you are watching from. And this is a very special session today because I am joined by two people who both mean a lot to me. Wendy Carey, who is our co-coach in our Resilient Coaching Program, as well as Bonnie Hodges, who is a longtime client who trusted herself, as she likes to say, and is now the founder of Better to Be Human. So I'm going to let them introduce themselves in just a minute. But first, I wanted to share something else super exciting we have coming up. And that is our free training happening on February 29th. So 1 week from today. Is that right? Yep, that's right. 1 week from today. And it is called 60 Minutes to Defeat Self-Sabotage. The QR code for that is in the upper corner of the screen here. All you need to do is take out your phone, hover your camera over that, and it will take you to the page to register. Or you can head to melodywilding.com/60mins, like the abbreviation for minutes, MINS. I'll also put the link in the comments here for everyone. So make sure you grab your spot because we are going to be talking about how to uncover the hidden key to stop habits like downplaying your achievements, always second guessing yourself, people pleasing. And we're going to share with you a proven framework to set you on the path to overcoming overthinking, overwhelm, overworking, and more. So definitely make sure you grab your spot there at the QR code in the corner. I see many of you are doing that already. Excellent. So with that, Wendy and Bonnie, welcome again. It's so wonderful to have you here. Wendy, let's have you go ahead and introduce yourself first.
Thanks, Melody. Hi, I'm Wendy Carey. I'm a sensitive striver and an executive well-being coach. My corporate background consists of a 30-year career as a leader in tech. And now I have the unique privilege, wonderful honor of being trained in Melody's coaching methods, and I coach Resilient alongside her.
Yeah, amazing. So happy to have you. Yes, and it's been over a year now. We're going on like
Yeah.
2 years. Yeah, really exciting. Excellent. And Bonnie, how about you?
Yeah. Well, I am Bonnie Hodges, also a sensitive striver, and know Wendy quite well. We did the Resilient course years ago together. I'm a career and life coach focused on helping professionals find balance and confidence in their life. I too have a very long corporate background, 20 plus years. And a few years ago, when I took Resilient, started taking inventory of what truly brought me joy in my corporate job. And it was helping people and coaching. And I want to help make more human leaders in the corporate space. So that's where we are today.
We need that for sure.
Yeah,
we need that. Amazing. And I mean, this was a big reason why I wanted to bring both of you on is because you both have had such incredible journeys of being able to get out of your own way and do what you really wanted to do, even if it wasn't necessarily the path that you imagined yourself on or that other people imagined for you. So if you are coming on, we have lots of people joining us. Hey, Ryan in North Carolina, Christina in Boston. Great to have you here. So if you are just joining, today we are talking about how to identify self-sabotaging patterns at work. And before we get into our conversation with Wendy and Bonnie today, I want to ground us in what we mean when we talk about self-sabotage. So, self sabotage, my definition, is when we, often without even realizing it, get in our own ways. We block our path to success, our path to progress, satisfaction in our work or in our jobs. And it's often like we're unconsciously setting up hurdles for ourselves. We make it harder to reach our goals. Getting to the bottom of self sabotage means that we're able to not only spot these patterns in ourselves, but we're able to figure out what triggers them and understand the cost that they have. And this is why this matters. Because when you can spot those self sabotaging habits at work, when you can see all of the ways you have been holding yourself back, with that awareness, you open up so many more possibilities for yourself. You're able to finish your work more quickly without that last minute panic because you've learned to manage some of your fears and insecurities. You can present confidently, put your ideas forward because you're not held back by that nagging sense of doubt. You feel relieved because you're managing your workload more effectively because you're able to say no to things. So when you are not stuck in this loop of self-sabotage, you're able to grow, to take on new challenges, to seize the opportunities that are in front of you that you might have been shying away from before. Your relationships are better because you're more reliable, you're more confident. So all of this, everything we're going to be talking about today and that free training we're doing next week, all of it is the difference between being stuck, moving forward, between doubting yourself and knowing you have what it takes to succeed. So with that, I want to start with our first question for each of you. And Bonnie, we'll start with you on this one, which is how did you even become interested in this topic of self-sabotage at work? Is there some sort of personal story behind it? What led you here?
Yeah, no, I think it's there's probably a lot of personal stories, but I love how you say it's getting in your own way. That's really how I think about it, and finally came to that realization of maybe it's not, maybe I'm not the victim, maybe it's not everybody else, maybe it could be me. Maybe I need to get out of my own way with this. So a few years ago, I started learning about NLP or neuro linguistics programming. It's a combination of how our brain works, the language that we use, which is a big part of the self-sabotage, and just the programs and the way that we operate ourselves and how that all comes together. So with that, I really started to become more aware of the language that I was using. So either what I was thinking inside or was what I was actually saying out loud to myself. So for me, that's when it really clicked for me a few years ago. And then obviously with your resilient course of, hey, I might be getting in my own way, and there's some things that I need to do to make life easier for myself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And what I think is important is it's easy. I want to be clear that you saying, well, maybe it's me. I looked at all these things and thought maybe it's me. And I think to some people that can sound like blaming the victim or not, or sort of dismissing that there may be systemic or environmental barriers or biases that are in place. And I want to be clear that that's not what we're talking about here, that this is about taking ownership, having agency over your experience and how you navigate through your work, your career, your life. And sometimes for many people, and I'm not saying this was the case for either of you, but for many people we see come through Resilient, it's recognizing, oh, actually, this environment is not right for me. And now I have the confidence to stop blaming myself for that and find something that's a better fit. So I just want to be clear that that's what we're talking about here is finding what ownership and agency you do have. So thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wendy, how about you? What got you interested in this topic?
Oh my gosh. So back when I was working in corporate, I felt stuck in the position I was in. I really wanted to move into a senior level management position, and I had no clue how to do that. But because of my desperation, I started grabbing at any opportunity that came along, and any opportunity that seemed to have greater potential to get to that level than wherever I was. And some of them, it ended up being a variety of different things, and it ended up confusing people. You know, what does she really want? What does she stand for? Who is she? And so I was really working against myself, instead of being intentional and having my own, uh, my message clearly thought out. Instead, I was just grabbing, and yeah, it really sabotaged me. It was years before I got promotions. So yeah,
Yeah.
I really found out at that point that those strategies were working against me, and so I started looking into self sabotage and um, trying to find the tools and techniques that I needed in order to find the clarity that I needed and be more intentional.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's such a subtle example of how self-sabotage shows up, is that when you lack clarity, or you think, well, I should take this next step. I should want the promotion. I should want to do XYZ. Yet deep down, that's not what you really want. It sends mixed messages to people, right? And they can't help you or support you because you don't have the internal clarity about what you want, and then right, it sabotages your next step. So
Yeah.
that's an interesting example I wouldn't have thought of immediately, but I think one that resonates with a lot of people.
Yeah.
Yeah. So speaking of which, ways self-sabotage shows up, Bonnie, what are some of the common ways you see people self-sabotage at work? Are there other subtle signs that maybe you have seen with yourself or some of the clients you've worked with so far?
Yeah. Both myself and with clients. What I'm hearing from clients right now is it's really touching on their thinking pattern. So what's going on internally, but then also their behavior. So what's happening externally. So, and I think the behavioral piece is funny when I think about this, because it's most people don't catch it in themselves, but they can see it in others, right? And they may go, oh, well, she's doing this to get here, or he's working too late, or she keeps working at nights and needs to stop doing that. But think about things like procrastinating. You mentioned this, Melody, multitasking, overcommitting, those lack of boundaries. If you're, I think about like this, if you're in that self-sabotaging pattern of, let's say, overcommitting, right? We're all like so guilty of this, or taking on too much, and you're working late at night, you can easily tell yourself, oh, well, I'm only doing this right now because I want the executives to see how great I am and that I'm worthy of that next big promotion. Or I want to be the go-to person on my team so that my supervisor sees that so I can get to the next level. Newsflash, you're self-sabotaging, right? You're just taking yourself down with those behaviors, but it's because you're doing it, you're not seeing it as much. So in coaching, I definitely have pointed that out to folks, and it's pretty eye-opening to them.
Yeah. Well, and that's a great teachable moment for people, that if you are constantly rationalizing a behavior, right? Or what and Wendy, I'll ask you in a second what we see in Resilient often, but often I have seen this among sensitive strivers in particular, is the, well, I'll rest when. Rest when we get past busy season, or when the summer comes, or when XYZ. And there's this deferral of uh, there's some future where everything's going to be perfect. And Bonnie, to use your words, newsflash, that doesn't happen. And so you need to change your behaviors in the moment instead of hoping that the future is just magically going to be different. Yeah. Yeah, Wendy, so from your perspective, what have you seen? Because now you've coached hundreds of people inside of Resilient. What are some of the patterns of self-sabotage you've particularly seen with people who come into the program?
Yeah. So something that I've seen is that people take responsibility for other people. They, um, somebody is having trouble meeting a deadline, and so you'll do it for them. Your team is falling behind, so you quickly, do things for them. Um, you you have an employee who's not performing up to par, and you start taking on some of their responsibilities so they look a little better and your team doesn't fall back, and you don't get that negative criticism from your boss. So yeah, that's the big ways that I see sensitive drivers, especially those in Resilient, self-sabotaging. When you take responsibility for others, you uh, you stop showing your own strengths.
Hmm.
You stop um, shining anymore because you're overworking, overfunctioning, all these things. So yeah, that's a huge way that
Yeah.
I've seen.
Yeah, we see that very often. You use the word overfunctioning, which is when you take on responsibility that's not yours, whether that is literally doing work, solving problems, fixing situations for other people, or trying to control other people's emotions. And I don't mean control in a necessarily overt manipulative way, but in the, well, if I can find just the right words to say, this person won't be mad at me.
Right.
Or if I can get ahead on XYZ, then they won't be upset. Right. And again, that's another way we trick ourselves into over functioning and thinking we can control someone else's response. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just want to remind everyone, if you are joining, please say hi in the chat. We do have folks here from all over the world. I see India, let's see, Colombia, San Francisco. Edith, great to have you. And I also want to remind you, Wendy mentioned how, and we'll talk more about this in just a sec, but how we see self-sabotage come up for sensitive strivers in particular. That's people who are naturally wired to be deeper thinkers and deeper feelers. And if that resonates with you, then you're going to want to make sure you grab your free spot for that training we're doing 1 week from today. It's called 60 Minutes to Defeat Self-Sabotage. The QR code is here in the corner of the screen by the top of my head over here. So all you need to do is take out your phone, hover your camera app over that, and it will bring you to the link to register. I also left the link in the comments here. It's melodywilding.com/60mins, like MINS, the abbreviation for minutes. All right. So then, speaking of which, Wendy, I'll go to you on this one because you were talking about how we see self-sabotage come up for sensitive strivers in Resilient. Do you think there are reasons that self-sabotage affects sensitive strivers more than other people?
Yeah. Our high sensitivity combined with high ambition, I think, sets us on this path. Um, Especially since with high ambition, sometimes we can be afraid of success. What if what if we are successful? Things will be even harder, there'll be more responsibilities. I'll have more people under me, and so I have to do 10 times as much. So we get afraid of success. And with our high ambition, that's a dichotomy that just does not work well together.
Yeah.
And we tend to stuff our intense emotions. Um, and since we stuff um, it builds up. And with that buildup of emotions, you tend to self-sabotage yourself because you feel um, awkward with all those emotions. You feel like you're not normal like everybody else. And so it comes out as self-sabotage.
Yeah. And in Resilient, we've called that shooting the second arrow,
Yeah.
right? Which is where you blame yourself for reacting a certain way. And that only perpetuates the cycle of self-sabotage because you're making yourself wrong or weak or inadequate, and that just makes things worse because you're just looking for confirming evidence that I am terrible and I am defective. And I do. There may be some people joining who have not heard the term sensitive striver before. So if you haven't, again, that means you are someone who is biologically wired to process everything around you more deeply. So that's other people's behavior, emotions. You are more attuned to that. Your brain literally lights up more and is more active in processing those things. And you're a deeper processor of your own emotions, thoughts, and behaviors. So you can almost become self aware to a fault where you are so self-aware that you overthink things, you get in your way, you're preoccupied with what other people think about you. And why we say biological wiring is because they have done MRIs and studies that show the sensitive brain has some differences where different parts of the brain uh, light up more and process more deeply. So they see this in about 20 to 30% of the population has this more active nervous system response to certain situations. So for anyone who is new to that terminology, that's what we are talking about here. So Bonnie, as a sensitive striver yourself, I know you have worked with other sensitive strivers. Tell me, what do you think? Why do you think self-sabotage affects these people more? What have you seen or experienced?
Yeah, for me, I'm a storyteller, right? For me, I call it my hamster wheel, and it is just this thing that just it doesn't stop. That hamster does not ever get off the wheel, and it's as sensitive strivers. I mean, Wendy said it right. We feel these things very strongly and ruminate on them, and we try to process them and what's the meaning behind it. And for me, it's that hamster wheel that just keeps overthinking, or I'm second guessing and getting in my own way again and again. And what works for me, I'm a very visual person. So for me, it is like if I just keep running into that wall with that same thing, I'm that wall. And it's like physically picking myself up, like, okay, Bonnie, that's enough. You're going to go over here for a little bit and you stand out of the way because we have a goal, right? We have a thing that we keep going towards. So for me, there are literally times I'm like, okay, just get out of the way for a second, keep moving forward. You're a sensitive striver. You're feeling more deeply than maybe others are, and just keep going. And I go back to the past of like, you've done this before. You've proven to yourself that you can get past that thing, or you can do that hard thing, and trust yourself. Just go for it. Right.
Trust yourself. That's
Yeah.
right. That's right. Yeah. And it's like, I don't know if either of you have ever seen that meme that says, I have 99 problems, like the Jay-Z song. I have 99 problems, but 98 of them are problems I've completely made up in my own head. Nothing has
Exactly.
described me more than that. Yes.
Yeah.
So yeah, Bonnie, I also want to ask you about you. Recently, I think it was an Instagram post,
Okay.
but you were breaking down a model that you have. And one part of that model was about patterns.
Mhm.
And you broke down understanding your patterns into three things. So, can you tell us about that? Let's sort of talk through each of those because I thought that was really instructive for people to break down their own self sabotage.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So the three patterns that I listed were behavioral patterns, thought patterns, and language patterns. So behavioral is could be things like the procrastinating on a project, right? It's the behavior, that outside piece that you're doing. Personally, it could be, you need to go to bed, but you scroll on your phone or you flip through Netflix, and you're like, I should do this, but your behavior is doing the opposite of what you should be doing, self-sabotaging. These patterns from a behavioral standpoint actually could be adopted earlier in life that served us at that point, right? It could have protected us when we were younger from worrying about things or trying to control situations that didn't feel stable. Perfectionism, all of us sensitive strivers probably could raise our hand for that piece popping up. So those in my mind are things to really just be aware of and look for. The next two for thought and language are very closely related. Thought is what's happening internally, what's in the head. So think about the self-talk that you have with yourself. Is it usually negative? Are you lowering your self-confidence or your drive or your spirit on things? Or is it compassionate? Is it understanding? Is it how you would talk to a friend? Probably more leaning more towards that negative piece, right? When you're self-sabotaging. I like to think about the thought patterns as I am statements. People say, I am lazy. I am dumb. Mine used to be, and I finally have gotten past this, it pops its head from time to time, but I'm just a girl from a small town, first in my family to go to college. I'm not as smart as everybody else I work with. And I just would just tank with that piece of it. It's like, no, why are you thinking this? You've done so well in these areas, and examples of others that you can look at. But I think those you have to be really careful with, because those can become beliefs, right? And that they absolutely do not serve us, but you've thought it for so long that it's just how it is. And you really have to question that. And the last is the language patterns. So these are things we're saying out loud. Usually it's, I can't do that. I'm not smart enough. To Wendy's point earlier, I don't deserve this promotion. I want it, but I probably don't deserve it, right? You're just countering that piece of it. So that language can become so ingrained in our patterns, we literally don't even notice it. It's just our normal talk. So I like the book Soundtracks. That's by John Acuff. He offers the most simple questions for this piece, and I try to use it often, is, when you see this pattern pop up, asking yourself 4 questions. 1, is it true? Probably not. Yep. Is it helpful? Definitely not. Is it kind? No. And would you say it to a friend? To me, that's the one that catches it. Like, would I actually say the words that I say to myself to a friend? It's like, oh my gosh, I would never do that. And that stops me right in my tracks. So those are the 3 that I posted about the other day.
Yeah. There's so much good stuff in there. And if you're listening, please be typing what's resonating with you in the comments here. But even just that idea that much of self-sabotage starts very early on, and it's those stories, it's conditioning we carry over with us. And I can very much relate to your story about, well, I'm just a girl from a small, who am I to do these things? Why am I special or different? And that really stops you. And as you were saying, those thoughts turn into beliefs. Your language then becomes your reality, and it becomes this cycle. Yep. And it's funny to hear John Acuff's 4 questions. In Resilient, we teach a tool called the Think tool, which is it true, helpful, inspiring, necessary, or kind? Right. And so it's an easy way to remember that sort of acronym and just check yourself, because sometimes, at least when you're starting to identify these patterns at first, sometimes it's just catching them. Because as you said, it's just, Soundtracks is a great name for it, because it's as if someone presses the tape player in your brain and it just goes. It's so ingrained that a situation happens, you have that same response every time. But your power lies in being able to have that moment of pause and consciousness to say, oh no, I'm not going to go down this route. I'm going to choose a different thought or a different action, right? Yeah. But you need that moment of realization to be able to do that. Yeah. Wendy, how about you? Any other thoughts on Bonnie's, what she shared about those 3 areas? So it was thoughts, behaviors, language.
Yeah. Going back to what I was talking about for people taking responsibility for others, that is something that's ingrained in us as children as well. It's taking responsibility for others in our family, and then we carry it over throughout our lives. And so those initial thoughts about your role in the family that create your behaviors in the future. And we just start taking over for other people and taking responsibility for them. And it's not ours to take. It sabotages us in so many ways. We work overtime. We try to make decisions for people, and that makes them feel bad, like they're not trusted. So a lot of ways that can come out, and it affects our language, of course. How we talk to people, how letting them know that no, it's okay. I'll do this, and it just feeds into the rest. It's definitely a cycle. I mean, all of those they work together. So love the thought of breaking it down into those 3 patterns.
Yeah, and your point about that we become the one in the family that fixes everything. A lot of this stems from in Resilient, and certainly in that free training we're hosting next week, 1 week from today. We'll talk about this idea of balance, right? That as a sensitive striver, so many of our traits are tremendous strengths, our empathy, our willingness to be helpful, our ability to see nuances and patterns and things that other people don't catch or aren't attuned to. But it's about balance. How do we not overuse those things, or sometimes under index on them, but how do we find the right balance where those strengths serve us instead of hurting us? And so if that is resonating with you in particular, make sure you grab your spot for that 60 minutes to defeat self-doubt training. QR code is in the corner of the screen here, or melodywilding.com/60mins, MINS. All right, let's see. I also wanted to talk a bit about your own personal experiences, again, because I think it's really helpful. Number one, self-sabotage at work is not something that people often have the opportunity to talk with other people about, especially on social media. We're often trying to project this image of success, and nothing bad ever happens, and I never make mistakes, and I never fail. So I would love to hear from each of you, because I think it's refreshing to hear from other people who have navigated self-sabotage. So Wendy, let's start with you. Do you have a personal experience where you were able to recognize self-sabotage coming out in your work or your career? And then how did you address it? How did you navigate it?
Yeah. When I first started out as a coach, trying to get into doing content on a daily basis, or even just a regular basis, I would overthink and think, and it would take me hours just to do one blog post. And so yeah, a lot of overthinking going on, and I ended up running out of time. If you're overthinking and spending tons of time just on one piece of content, you can't get to the rest of your business. And so I was giving up stuff like reaching out to people and promoting what I do and letting people know what value I can provide. Instead, I was spending all this time focusing on the content. So yeah, definitely a lot of self-sabotage with that.
I relate to that. And sometimes, specifically in my own business, and I think this applies to any type of work, it might not be a piece of content for your business, but it might be a presentation or a report for your boss, right? But we spend an inordinate amount of time trying to make it perfect. Or Bonnie, I think earlier you brought up multitasking as another way of self-sabotaging. I certainly have to check myself with that, where I will do all of the little things that feel easy and give me that dopamine hit. And then the day is gone and I haven't tackled the big important thing that felt harder and more daunting. So, Bonnie, how about you? Has there been a time when you recognized you were sabotaging yourself, and how did you navigate it?
Yes, I love this conversation. I feel so seen with both of you right now. For me, for mine right now, like, I mean, this happened in corporate world, but it's happening today. I'm much more aware of it. Mine is a behavioral piece of, I call it task hopping. So jumping from one task to another. So maybe it's related, I think, a little bit to the multitasking. But so example is, I have a big project or a launch that I want to do with my coaching business. And I get so excited about it. And I start to get a little overwhelmed of just how big this thing's going to be, right? Because I say it and go, I'm going to do this. Oh my gosh, there's all these things that have to get done. So I just start jumping from one thing to another. Is it like squirrel brain? Is that what that is?
Yes.
Like, I'll do this and this and that and that. And then I look and I go, oh my gosh, there's a little bit of a lot of things that have started, but nothing's finished. So now I feel even more overwhelmed because I have the list, but some of it kind of done, some of it's kind of not done. So I catch myself, and it's literally, my body is physically like, over here, and then I go there, and then I go here, and I catch it, and okay, you just need to stop, get up, move away from the desk. And I start organizing this piece of it, right? And I start to list out every piece that needs to be done, even to the tiniest things, like set up the Zoom call, right? Just the tiniest things. I get to gain control back over the situation, which makes me feel better. Mm-hmm. I get to make a nice, neat list. I can use my colored pens or pretty Post-it notes or whatever it is to make me feel better about it. And then I just start working on one piece at a time. With the NLP language, we call it chunking down the tasks. And for me, that's been a game changer for me, of like, you're going to get it all done, but you need to do one thing at a time versus hopping, because it just doesn't work. But obviously it takes some serious discipline to do that, and awareness, like you mentioned earlier. But I've done it enough that I've proven I can't argue it, because it does work when I do it.
Yeah. Yeah. And well, I just want to also underscore some of the takeaways that are coming out of this discussion too, is even recognizing self-sabotage can break down into thoughts, behaviors, language. And if I had one piece of homework for everyone here, it's identify just one of those things you want to work on, just one. And then there's also, once you can identify it, okay, now you're more aware. Can you catch yourself in doing it? And can you apply something like that think tool? Is it true, helpful, inspiring, necessary, kind? Would you say this to a friend as well? And then can you choose a different action? That's a very sort of step-by-step way of catching yourself and turning the ship on some of this self-sabotage. Yeah. And the idea of chunking is so true. This happens to me all the time as well. We were talking on Resilient, I think it was last week, about how one of my I'm very good at following through and execution. I'm not good at starting things. I have a lot of resistance to starting new things. I find it very difficult and I get very overwhelmed. That's helpful. I know that is my tendency. And so I have to play little mental tricks with myself, where breaking it down into the micro pieces, but then also on a day-to-day basis, I have to set the bar for success for myself very low. So earlier this week, I had to write an article, and I was resisting it. And so I made a pact with myself. All you need to do in the next half hour is write the first paragraph of the introduction. That's all you need to do. And that was enough to get me on board to say, okay, that feels manageable. And then within an hour or so, I had the entire article written, because I had that momentum of, okay, I checked the box. I was successful with writing that one paragraph, and now I'm in the flow. Now I'm going. Yeah. Yeah. It's so true. So true. So we're coming to the end of our time here, and so many great takeaways and insights. And a lot of people are saying everything you're talking about really resonates, which is fantastic. So, Bonnie, what advice do you have for someone who realizes now, oh my gosh, I'm self-sabotaging, and they feel stuck in these patterns? What advice would you have for them?
Yeah. Well, first of all, kudos to you for recognizing the pattern. I think that's the hardest part, is recognizing it. So Good job there. 3 pieces of advice would be, we've kind of talked about this already, is just slow down and start paying attention to those patterns and listen to the words that are coming out and asking, like, wait a minute, I say that all the time. Is that a pattern? Did I just discover this? Change the pattern, right? Sounds easy, but literally just stop what you're doing and find the opposite way to think, to speak, or to behave. Okay, I can't. Okay, what's the opposite of that? I don't know how yet, but I have resources to learn. Right? It's just the reframe of that piece can just simply be like, oh my gosh, there we go. And then, of course, I have to plug working with a coach, right? Our job is to listen so intently to our clients as they speak that, I mean, just about every call I have with clients, I'm like, whoa, hold on. Listen to what you just said. You said this. And they're like, oh my gosh, I had no idea. And then we can really start to dig in. And Wendy, you said this earlier of like finding the thing that works for you, right? It's not about, oh, do this because this has worked for me, but what's going to work for that client in their situation right now. And a coach can help that person kind of work through that of what's going to work best for them. So those would be my 3 tips.
Yeah, fantastic. Yes. And I mean, it's so helpful. A lot of what we talked about today was also about getting outside of yourself, whether that's asking, would I say this to a friend? That's a way of separating from yourself to get a more objective assessment of your situation. And of course, a coach is a great way to do that. We're all fans of coaching here. So, Wendy, how about you? What advice would you have for someone who feels stuck in self-sabotage right now?
Well, usually when I'm stuck, how I take the time to recognize it, like Bonnie was talking about. And then I think about what's the ideal. If I wasn't self-sabotaging, where would I want to be? And then evaluate, okay, well, where am I now? And then think about what's the one thing that I can do now to get closer to my ideal. So it creates a path. You get this one next step, and then you can think about, okay, what's that one next thing I can do? And just take tiny steps working toward it. And of course, my other recommendation is getting a coach.
Love it. There's a pattern there for sure. Great. Well, thank you both. And I want to encourage everyone who is still with us, please type in the comments what you are taking away from this conversation. I always say insight without action is useless. So we want you to take what you have learned today or anything that has come up for you, even if it was just a mindset shift or just not feeling alone in this. What are you taking away and going to put into action? Put that in the comments. All right. Bonnie, Wendy, let's have you first share, where can people find you? How can they connect with you?
Yeah, absolutely. Here on LinkedIn, I'm under just my personal name, Bonnie Hodges, and then also Better to Be Human, and then post quite a bit over on Instagram and Facebook as Better to Be Human.
Excellent. Yeah. Thank you. And Wendy, how about you?
Yeah, you can find me on lots of different social channels. But to find out every place to find me, go to linktree. linktr.ee/Wendy Carey, and you'll find everywhere I am.
Yeah, amazing. We'll also put those in the chat so everyone can find them. And I just want to encourage everyone, again, 1 week from today. So next Thursday, February 29th at 5 p.m. Eastern, we are hosting a live free training called 60 Minutes to Defeat Self-Sabotage. So come join me and Wendy. We'll also have other Resilient alums there joining us, which is really exciting. And if this conversation resonated with you, then you're going to want to be there. We're going to talk about if you are tired of getting in your own way at work, then we are going to help you uncover some of the hidden things that have been behind those habits of downplaying your achievements, second guessing yourself, people pleasing, saying yes too much. And our goal is to give you a proven framework to set you on the path to feeling more confident and in control in your work life. So the link for that is the QR code is here on the screen. So just take out your phone, open the camera app, hover it over that, and we'll bring you right to the Zoom page to register. Or you can head to melodywilding.com/60mins, MINS. All right. Thank you so much, Bonnie and Wendy. It means the world to have you here. And I'm just tell you this all the time and all of our resilient clients, just how proud I am of you, and to see both of you really be able to get out of your own way and follow your dreams and seize opportunities, step up to new and big challenges. I mean, it is just incredible to see, and to have you here to be able to talk about it is such a gift. So thank you both. Thank you everyone for joining today. Take care, and we'll see you very soon. Bye everyone.